YouTube, Dawson Ryder here. In today's video, we're going to be talking about MMPR again, but this time I wanted to talk about this canceled MMPR animated movie, which some new details seemingly just came out about it. Now, these might not be new to you. I know there are some things about this movie that already came out that actually flew over my head. I didn't know about this at all. You know, I found this article, I had to translate it, so I'm going to put up some screen grabs from it, but the translations might be slightly off. I don't know if there's a US translation yet. I was looking for one, and when I was looking for one, I found out that some details and pictures from this came out a long time ago, and I didn't even know about it. I knew there was rumors a couple times that they wanted to try something animated, and I think during the Disney era in particular, there was a rumor for that. But we have some pictures of things you've already seen, like the poster and stuff, which shows very much just classic MMPR suits for the most part, but with a very different style of Megazord that is kind of akin to the Hyperforce Megazord, to be honest with you. But this new article has some more details about the plot and characters. I'm going to put up just the screen grabs from the site for the characters because I don't feel like reading the whole thing for each one, because they're generally within the lines of, like, you know, the Jason, Zach, Trini type of characters. I do really like the art style for these characters, though, like in terms of what they're using here, and I'll kind of cycle through them all right now while I'm waffling on, and you can pause if you want to see it. But I really like the art style here for these. And although, you know, it's funny, some of them look different than, you know, you would expect. Like Jason does look kind of different, but ones like Zach kind of look like Kevin, to be honest with you. Kevin! I ain't even trying to hear that. Remember that, guys? Remember that? And then we have some sort of still images from like teasers and stuff where it looks kind of 3D-ish animated, and the suits mainly look the same, just with these kind of communicator-like devices they have that are a little bit different and stuff like that. And some of these I've seen around before. I didn't know they were from this, and these were some of the images that were released before as well in terms of the teaser. But there's some concept art here, which I really like the art style for. Like, I think it would have been 3D animated, but if it would have been more animated like this, whether 3D or not, I think I really would have liked it. And I wanted to talk a bit about the plot. I'm going to skim over the plot here in a minute and talk about that. And then there's also some concept art I wanted to talk about, but I just wanted to talk about, you know, why this didn't happen a little bit and what it could have been like if it would have happened, or if something like this could happen in the future. And I just thought it was interesting timing because we're on the cusp of a reboot right now, and we just had the discussion about always using MMPR with Reignition, and I've said many times I would love an animated series and I think it could work. But before I get started, does anyone want to get out? And also, it is interesting, it says that this was in development called Power Rangers Universe, I believe it is, or Origins, sorry, Wolverine, Power Rangers Origins Wolverine, and it got canceled in favor of the 2017 movie, but it seems like it was just canceled in terms of they decided to go with 2017, but there's a real possibility they could have gone forward with this. You know, I've seen people always in the comments being like, Toei would never allow this to happen. It seems like it might have happened. So I think that animated isn't off the table. And even if there is some sort of pushback from Toei, or was, it's not something that's like impossible. It's not like an impossible ask that this could happen. But anyway, so for the story here, I'm going to link to the article so you can just click Google Translate, it'll translate it for you if you want to get more details. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it because I'm terrible at having to read. Even though I have all the time in the world, it just takes me back to having to read in school, and I always hated that, and I start stumbling over my words. I mean, I do already, but when I have to read, it makes it even worse. But generally, it's got the core architecture of MMPR. You know, you have Rita being awakened and Zordon being trapped in a different dimension, and he recruits 5 teenagers with attitude. It does sound like there's a fun sequence where Alpha was disguised on Earth. We're kind of recruiting everyone, and there's like a back and forth to get them there. And then, oddly enough, there's some similar beats to the 2017 movie. You know, they kind of train a bit. They train with the Zords, which have different designs I'll put up here. I actually think they look pretty cool. I think it's neat that they actually experimented with different designs. And like I said, the Megazord looks like the Hyperforce Megazord a bit. And they do get these new things called hollow bracelets, which are their versions of the communicators, which is cool. And they're on the outside of the suits. And so they have training montages and stuff like that, and having a hard time working together at first and all that jazz. And there's later a point, spoiler alert, where Billy gets kidnapped. So it almost sounds like there's some echoes here, kind of like when you can see movies where there's some echoes of the beats from the last draft. Like, you can see some echoes of the structure of Duel of the Fates and Rise of Skywalker, oddly enough. But anyway, then I guess they actually become Rangers at the end of Act 2. Now, this has 4 acts. I always thought movies had 3 acts. I don't know why there's 4 acts. You know, welcome to Act 3. That's when you reveal Ghostface. Anyway, at the end of Act 2, they become the Rangers, and that would have appeased people that were a little bit too shallow for the 2017 movie, quite frankly. They were like, that's not Rangers if there's not bright colors and explosions, which I guess is true, but I liked the character development over shallow stuff any day. But anyway, they were going to get to it in the second movie. I appreciated that they builded to it. They had balls for it. But it sounds like they would have become Rangers in Act 2 and then become kind of famous and let it get to their head, which obviously wasn't part of the 2017 movie. And kind of reminding me actually of Ben 10 when his thing got to his head, like at the end of Alien Force and stuff, which I think they were course correcting from him being a little bit boring compared to the original series, but then they made him kind of unlikable. Anyway, that's not about Ben 10, but it gets to their head and it leads to them being defeated. Billy gets kidnapped and they all have to rally together to save him, and they defeat Rita at the end after she makes like a mega monster that winds up absorbing her, and Zordon sacrifices himself, and at the end though there's like a hint that he's alive and stuff. He shows up in the RPM morpher, and they are all united and they're Rangers, and Rita's shown in a hell dimension. It doesn't seem like, oddly enough, there's any hints at Tommy, which is kind of interesting. I assumed that maybe with wherever Rita was, there'd be some sort of hint at Tommy and stuff like that. I'm trying to find it here. There's also this new thing about, it's like a new version of the morphing grid. It sounds like it's called like Zordania or something like that. Like, hold on, please hold while I find this. Here it is, the Zordosphere. That's where the dimension that Zordon is built for Zords. It sounds like, I don't know. I kind of prefer the morphing grid. I don't know if that was meant to be the equivalent, and I'm just missing it. Also, when I was skimming through this to find it, I did see the part where there's going to be personalities for the dinosaurs, which is kind of cool. So yeah, this sounds rather basic, kind of using the core DNA of MMPR, but adding some other little things in there. I think it could have been successful in terms of being a solid movie. I kind of like the 2017 more in its approach. Like, I love adaptions like that where they do stuff like Zordon was red and Rita was green. I think there was some really cool stuff there, but I think this was kind of a solid base. Now quickly, let's just talk about, there is some concept art design here. Really interesting stuff. There were like different suit designs. Some of them look like they're taking cues from Jetman and other Toku in a way, other Sentai, which is interesting. I don't know whether there was just a time early on where they're like, maybe we won't use dinosaurs, but then obviously they wound up using really close to the letter to the line MMPR suits, with the exception of these fancy communicators. The Zords, though, look very different. They kind of remind me of a couple things. I don't know if it's Voltron or what, but they definitely remind me of some other stuff. There's also some concept art that are similar to the main Megazord. Like, there's a black and white one here that looks sort of more similar to the main Megazord we know, and just, I don't know if it would have been black and white. I don't think so. That would have been cool. That could have been a cool negative image evil Megazord. But they went through a bunch of different designs, some of which that are very different, and like the one we got that looks like Hyperforce. Some that, in my opinion, resemble almost like Gundam or even some classic legacy designs for Sentai. But I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting here that they experimented briefly with different designs for their suits, but then very quickly went to just very classic designs. But they really experimented with the robot a lot, which I really liked. I kind of dig the Hyperforce-esque one they wound up getting. And I do like the idea of the communicators here too. I think they're pretty cool. Honestly, when I first saw them, I thought, oh, is that going to replace the power buckle? And like, you put the coin in there and it's all in one. But yeah, this sounded interesting. I do wish we would have got this. I don't necessarily think it would have done better than the 2017 movie. I know everyone says like it flopped or whatever, but you know what I mean. Like, I think especially during that time, I know there's been kind of a boom in animation recently in terms of it being taken more seriously and people trying to replicate Spider-Verse. But Spider-Verse is so different because, I mean, it's Spider-Man, guys. Come on, it's a completely different league. Power Rangers isn't even able to sign up for the league. They don't have enough badges. So obviously Spider-Man's going to do way better than Power Rangers no matter what. But then, of course, Spider-Verse had that unique word of mouth, and then that carried over to the sequel. I know there's been a couple that have attempted to recapture that success to one degree or another and haven't been really successful. I mean, I know there was a Puss in Boots movie that was well received. I don't know how it did financially, though. I haven't seen it. Mutant Mayhem, I think, is probably the best example of what you could hope for. And I even thought about doing a video back when Turtles came out about how it's so interesting that Turtles and Power Rangers are kind of on similar wavelength, and yet Turtle has respect. Turtle has respect. But same thing with Transformers. It's like, I think, even though Mutant Mayhem very much looks like a kid's movie, and it is a kid's movie, it's a movie that can be enjoyed by older fans, that I think your average older nerd geek casual fan that's in their 20s or 30s would be willing to say, hey, I'm going to go see Turtles today, but with Power Rangers they would laugh in your face and leave. Point is, though, that I think that it would hope to achieve something more similar to Mutant Mayhem, where I don't think it blew up the box office, but it did well enough to get a sequel, to get an animated series, and I think that would have been cool. I think that right now, honestly, at any point, I think doing something like this would have been better suited for like a Netflix or streaming movie that spawned a series, and I think you could have found a decent level of success there. I don't think so much right now, but this is something I would love to see. Now, one thing, though, is I really wish they would branch more out. Like, I do think they were taking some nice creative liberties and doing different stuff with the Zords is nice, but that's what I want to see done with the suits and with everything. Something I forgot to mention in my recent MMPR video is, like, honestly, I would be fine if they just completely committed to MMPR. And I know that sounds funny because I think a lot of people think we already have, but by that I mean we are just different here in America in terms of franchises. We're not used to the anthological approach and stuff like that, which is why, Turtles and Transformers are usually the same characters. Of course, you get new characters every now and then, but you know what I mean. But they reinvent them every year. Transformers Animated is different from Prime. Mutant Mayhem is different than 2012, is different than Rise. So if we just committed to the set of MMPR characters, plus stuff like Rocky, Adam, and Aisha, and just reinvented them and allowed them to actually redesign them and let them feel different. Like here, they're almost there. We got different Zords, but they just kept the suits so samey. Like if we can't take the risk of just redesigning the suits a little bit, I think the comics approach would be great, doing something like the Prime designs, allowing to introduce new characters like the Omegas and stuff, but just keep reinventing it. And we always stay to season 1 too. Like I'm fine, I get it, you have to use MMPR, it's the only one people know, but you got 2 other seasons worth of material in Zords. We can at least use that. We're fortunate enough we have more than just 1 season's worth of stuff. But yeah, this is interesting. I would still really love Power Rangers to try something animated in the future. I think it just opens up the possibilities of creativity and could be better for the brand. But what do you guys think of these canceled plans for the movie and designs? Let me know in the comments as always. Till next time, Dawson Ryder signing out.